Jocelyn. Hey everyone. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Awesome. Rock and roll. And I got the chat. All right, cool. Happy Tuesday, everybody. So yeah, my name is Brad. We are going to be talking today, if I can advance my screen, cash money. That's what we're talking about. So quickly, I'm a marketing strategist, work with a bunch of brands and so forth. The most important thing is I teach digital marketing strategy at SMU in Dallas. And I say that because two reasons. One is I introduce myself as a professional amateur in the sense of I get paid money to teach this, but I'm still figuring it out because marketing, as we know, is changing so quickly. And two, I have to teach people at startups, people at enterprise, B2B, B2C. So over the years, I've developed, I would say, pretty universal frameworks that can be applied, strategic frameworks that can be applied small business, medium-sized business, B2B, B2C products and services. So I'm about to put that to the test. In my class, I teach this framework called PB Goes, which I teach the whole class around. Like these are like the 8 most critical elements that you need to identify before putting together a marketing plan. And I pay a lot of attention to these first 3 variables. Now, you guys all know this, right? People, who are we targeting? What problem do we solve? Emotional, functional benefits. Brand, how is our product or service different than our competitors? That's pretty one-on-one stuff. But it's this budget piece that I think a lot of marketers, a lot of marketing programs, frankly, kind of just pass over. It's like it's a marketing budget is kind of like this secondary thing that we don't. It's kind of comes at the end. And part of my philosophy is the budget that you have to spend is as important as who you're going after, as well as how your product or service is different. So today we're going to be talking budgeting, and I want to make the case that marketing budgeting is marketing strategy. And it's impossible to do marketing in 2024, 2025 effectively without taking a strategic approach to budgeting. And that's what I hope to accomplish today in the next 45 fun-filled minutes. There's going to be lots of information. I hope we hopefully will not overwhelm you, and there will be time. Hopefully, there will be time for Q&A because I love questions. So over the next 45 minutes, I'll be talking about why marketing budgets matter more than ever. It kind of is self-explanatory, but I just want to break that down. How much roughly you should be spending on marketing. So we'll talk about this marketing benchmark tool that I'm about to launch based upon a bunch of cool data from Duke University and actually the AMA. Then if I talk about how much you should spend on marketing, then I want to talk about how you should spend your marketing budget and 4 main principles there. The idea of benchmarking your marketing budget, diversifying your marketing budget, playing the long and short game, and then this idea of iterating constantly and creating more or less a 3-year plan to exceed the benchmark. And I'll explain all of that over the next 45 minutes and hopefully take questions. So, first of all, unfortunately, there is no free lunch in life. There is no free lunch in business. And as you all know, you got to spend money to make money. And I think there's a lot of business owners, CFOs, that when they look at marketing, they look at it as an expense and not as an investment, or they think marketing is like the arts and crafts department. And it's one thing that, when times are tough, we cut. And I'm trying to actually argue the opposite, that when times are tough, it's actually something that you should double down on. So there are 3 truths of every business. I don't care if you're in oil and gas or if you're in electronics or you're selling spices. All these 3 truths apply to all businesses. Truth number 1 is that every company wants to grow. And I challenge you to find any company that's like, hey, let's shrink this quarter. Second truth is all growth requires resources. You can't, if you get a puppy, you got to feed the puppy chow or whatever you feed it. If you're raising a garden, you've got to feed it sunlight and water and Miracle Grow, you get it. So all growth requires resources. And the third truth is that resources are limited. They're finite, and we don't have all the budget in the world. And so managing that finite resources That's where strategy comes in. Strategy is this big word that we use a lot, but ultimately it's about seizing a market opportunity or overcoming a market challenge with finite resources. And so how you manage those resources is where strategy comes in. So strategy is a big word, and in my philosophy of the class, I look at these different layers of strategy, and it's funny because it's funny about how many organizations this isn't aligned. It's kind of like all cacophony. But I just want to take a few minutes to define these terms, and then we'll kind of rock and roll into marketing strategy. So business strategy is how I see it is business strategy is about what your business or what your client's business values and how you create value in the marketplace. And if you don't create value in the marketplace, you really don't have a business strategy, I would argue. Brand strategy is how do you express that value to the marketplace? How do you say our widget is better than the other widget? And finally, marketing strategy is about using finite resources. Again, there's that reference to, we don't have unlimited budget, we don't have unlimited resources, we don't have unlimited time, using finite resources to reach your target market, convince them of your value, and convert them into customers. And so this idea of finite resources puts an emphasis that budgets and how we use our budgets, it's more important than ever. Because I'm a nerd, I'm going to talk about a bunch of white papers. You guys might have heard this one. It came out a couple years ago called The Long and Short of It. It was written by two ex-DDB media planners in London who now teach. So Legs Benet teaches at Oxford University marketing. Peter Field teaches at Cambridge University. And they said, just because of the complexity of the world that we live in, and there's more competition, and there's more people vying for customers' attention, how you spend marketing budgets, it's more critical than ever. There used to be a time, boys and girls, when there was only 3 channels of TV and there wasn't that much competition. And basically, if you ran an ad in the newspaper, you would sell your products and you wouldn't really have to scrutinize the budget. You would just run the ad. Obviously, we know marketing isn't that simple anymore. So how you spend how much money you spend and how you spend is more important than ever. They also talk about, and I'm going to break this down, the more people that are exposed to your message, the bigger the effects from a business standpoint. I'll break that down. And then while we need both long-term and short-term strategies. So that second bullet I'm going to talk about, and this is a big important key to unlocking why budget is so important. So studies have shown that share of voice directly correlates to market share. So what do I mean by that? Share of voice is in your category that your company competes in or your client's company compete in, that market, and that could be, widget makers in Houston. It could be widget makers in Texas. It could be widget makers overall. Whatever market that you choose, the amount of messaging of your company relative to your competition, that's share of voice. You guys know that's pretty 101. Share of voice correlates more or less to market share, which is on the left-hand side. If I were to look at, let's say, all social media conversations in Houston, Texas about widgets, if my company has the second largest share of voice, statistics tell me that we're going to have the second amount of market share, which is of all of the widget transactions in Houston, we're going to have the second spot. So the big idea here is that share of voice correlates directly to market share. So the more that you can get your message out relative to the competition, so that's the left-hand side, the more transactions you're going to have in that category relative to the competition. So a good way of thinking about this, and you'll quickly discover I love analogies, is, well, before I go to that, so the idea is when share of voice and SOV, share of voice and share of market, when they're equal, it's equilibrium. And the big idea here is, this is a big one, your marketing budget, what your company spends on marketing budget right now is what is necessary to maintain market share. Let me say that again. Your current market budget that your company spends or your client spends, that marketing budget is what is necessary to maintain current market share. So a good way of thinking about this, and this is the analogy I was talking about, is think of a marketing budget as an airplane's fuel tank. And this is literally a rhyme I came up with. Just as an airplane must burn fuel to stay in the air, so too must a company spend marketing dollars to maintain market share. So an airplane, you have to constantly burn fuel in the airplane, or what happens? You crash. And so as a company, you constantly have to be spending money on marketing dollars, or what happens? Your revenue goes down. So there's a reason why some of the biggest brands in the world spend the most money on marketing. So this is a billboard in downtown Dallas that Apple has had a lease on for 10 years, and they're promoting the iPhone. Everyone knows the iPhone, but they're spending that money to reinforce their market share. In most categories, the largest category leaders also tend to spend the most money on advertising. And I have an asterisk there on advertising because I want to emphasize that marketing is broader than advertising. But nevertheless, the point here is that in any category, the brands with the largest market share are also spending the most dollars on marketing itself. Case in point, Apple, Coke, McDonald's. McDonald's spends more money than Burger King. Apple, Coke spends more money on Pepsi. Walmart spends more money on than Target. I think you catch my drift. So back to this idea that share of voice correlates to market share. So whenever share of voice is lower than market share, whenever you shrink your marketing budget, you cut your marketing budget, what happens is your marketing share will eventually start to erode. So, just think about the airplane. Think about the CFO of Southwest Airlines was like looking at the budget and like, oh, the economy is not doing too well. You know what? Let's cut fuel costs. Let's put less money into our airplanes. Well, if you did that, what's going to happen? Your airplane's going to go down. The same thing with business. I love this quote from Henry Ford about kind of talking about chief financial officers and directors of finance who have a tendency when times are tough, the first thing they do is they cut marketing budgets. And this is an actual quote. A man who stops advertising to save money is like a man who stops a clock to save time. It's foolhardy. And if trying to grow by cutting, there's no way to growth. The Ingenberg Bass Institute of University of South Florida, it's like a leading marketing research institute, like proved through looking at tons of data, 365 brands in the United States, that when brands stop advertising, not right away, but over time, sales do go down. So if Coke stopped advertising tomorrow, or Walmart stopped advertising tomorrow, or Amazon stopped advertising tomorrow, nothing would happen to their sales. But if they stayed dark, or if they continued to decrease advertising over time, their revenue and their market share will decrease. And that is a fact of just economics. So we know share of voice correlates to market share. And so when you spend less on marketing, your revenue goes down. And so that shows you the importance of marketing budget. Now, the reverse is also true, that when your share of voice is greater than your market share. So let's say you only have 10% market share in your widget category, but you have 20% of the share of voice. If you maintain that 20% share of voice, so you're basically doubling your share of voice relative to your market share, brands tend to grow because you're getting the word out and so forth. So kind of finishing up this first section, marketing budget is critical to growth. And so I always tell my clients, think of your marketing budget almost like as an investment fund. So kind of like, if you ask a financial planner, how much money should I save? They would probably say as much as you can. So if someone said, how much money should I put in my marketing budget? I would literally say as much as you can, because the more money you spend on marketing, and I'm not saying to spend, you need a strategy, you need all the insights and so forth. But typically, the more money you put into marketing, the more likely your company is going to be resilient and either maintain market share or grow market share. So budgets matter more than ever. Hopefully that's clear. So guys, that's the first part of my presentation. Why budgets matter more than ever. If there's any questions, will come up at the end of the presentation. Second part, if I first establish marketing budgets are important, it kind of begs the question, well, how much money should we be spending on marketing? How much money should my clients be spending on marketing? And so forth. And the answer, which I always tell my class, is it depends. So one is it depends on, are you a startup? Are you an established company? Are you an enterprise and so forth? What of the five stages of a business development is your company? Are you guys going on Shark Tank? Are you expanding and so forth? But typically companies, they're just kind of starting out here. They're brand new. They're proving product market fit. They're proving financial viability. There is there's friction in the marketplace, and typically whenever you're starting a company, your acquisition costs are going to be higher than being an established player. It just kind of goes without saying. And going back to my airplane analogy, because I love analogies, if you're on the ground, and you start your jets, taking off in an airplane, that is where you're going to burn the most fuel, because no one's ever heard of your company. You have all this competition, and just to get up and get enough speed, that's where you're burning the most fuel. And then once you're in the air, if you want to climb and go higher, so to speak, how far am I going to take this metaphor? You're still burning lots of fuel. It's only kind of when you get to the cruising altitude, where you kind of really get above the clouds. And that analogy is when you become a category leader, do you find efficiencies? And there is inherent efficiencies with being the top player in any category, because you have the most brand awareness, you have the most customers talking about your brand. And so that's one of the reasons why these big brands continue to spend money, because they've worked so hard to gain that market share. They're spending that money just to keep that market share in place. McDonald's does not expect that their growth is going to continue, their revenue is going to continue with their market spend. McDonald's expects that their revenue will maintain with their marketing spend. So still, how much money should we put toward marketing? Uh, a lot of people don't know about this resource. This is an amazing resource that my company has spent a lot of time getting data from. So this is cmosurvey.org. It was founded and administered by Dr. Christine Moorman of Duke University. I actually got permission from her to use this data. And so this is actually Duke University's School of Business, Deloitte Consulting, and you guys may recognize the National American Market Association. Every year since 2008 or 2009, they've been asking chief marketing officers, VP of marketing, directors of marketing at United States companies, B2B, B2C, a variety of questions. And it's a pretty wide swath of marketers. So they're asking small companies, enterprise companies, B2B, B2C, industry and revenue, a series of questions. But one of the questions is, how much money do you spend on marketing? What percentage of money what percentage of revenue do you spend on marketing? And so overall, the spread is anywhere from like 6% to 17%. And actually, they just released the latest findings, and the spread's about 3%. It's gone down all the way up to 20%. 3% is like energy companies, and 20% is, I think, consumer service companies like home services and whatnot, because there's lots of competition. You can go right now to cmosurvey.org and get the data, and it is very academic, and it is like proper, quantitative research to see, kind of look up, like you can find the industry that you're in, and then the revenue, and then find that budget benchmark. However, I'm here to announce that we have been working on a tool that's in beta right now, but you can test this out. You can sign up for it, but we're still working on the data. But you can go to marketingbudgetbenchmark.com. You can answer 5 questions and about your business or your client's business. What industry are you in? How much revenue do you generate per month, per year? What sector are you, B2B, B2C, products or services? And I think the other one is number of employees, and then the percentage of revenue that you generate online, like e-commerce and so forth. It'll spit out, give you a link to the budget benchmark for companies that share the same 5 characteristics as yours. Um, and what's really great about this is, in companies that have the same characteristics as ours, they make widgets, they have 100 employees or less, they make $5 million of revenue per year, and 20% of the revenue comes from um, online. Companies like that, let's just say they spend 14% of their revenue on marketing. And you can use that benchmark to say, well, how much do we spend on marketing? Are we spending less than that or more than that? Knowing that if you spend at your market share, you're going to maintain revenue. And basically, you need to outspend your competition to grow market share. And the budget benchmark is a really quick and easy way to start having those strategic conversations. So that hopefully will answer how much should we be spending on marketing. So now if we've answered how much should we be spending on marketing, let's finally, and my Lord, we're going so quick. I go quick, people. Let's talk about how you should spend your marketing budget. So part of marketing strategy is, budget strategy is allocating the right amount, but it's also being strategic in how you spend that money. And I think too many people, it's just the budget allocations as an afterthought, both how much it is as well as how to spend it. So I'm going to give you some tips about in 2025 and beyond, how to actually plan out and spending your marketing budget so you're maximizing results. Okay, so how should we be spending marketing budget? I've got like 4 little parts to this section here. So part number 1 is benchmark your budgets. Part number 2 is diversify your investments. Part number 3 is play the long and short game. And part number 4, plan, iterate, and prepare to scale up. So I'll quickly take you through each of these. And then, my Lord, I'm going fast. We're at 25 minutes. I think we're okay. We'll have time for questions. So part number 1, benchmark your budget. So it goes without saying, either go to cmosurvey.org and get the data, or go to marketing budget benchmark and just get that number, knowing what companies that share your same characteristics, what percentage of revenue they're dedicating to marketing, and just figure out, are we above or below that level? That would be the first step. Second step is diversification. So before I said, think of your marketing budget as an investment fund. And, in one of the rules of smart investment is what? Diversifying. Don't put all of your money in Bitcoin. Sorry, guys. Don't put all of your money in stocks. Don't put all of your money in gold. Diversify. And so the same thing with your marketing budget. So just reminding you guys, right? Marketing strategy is using finite resources to reach your target market, convince them of your value, and convert them into customers. Channel strategy. So if marketing strategy is overall using your marketing budget to reach your audiences, convince them of your value, and convert them into customers, your channel strategy is, how do you use finite resources in specific media channels, right? And as we all know, there's different media channels and there's different genres of media channels. And this is pretty 101 for anyone that's on this webinar. But there's 3 basic media channels. And you could say there's 3: paid, owned, and earned. Some people say shared, but just for simplicity for my class, I'm like, look, there are 3 primary channels of media, right? Paid, owned, and earned. So when you're looking at your marketing budget, I would argue that you need to diversify your marketing budget. And too often we equate marketing with advertising, and that, hey, if I have X amount of money to spend on my marketing for the year, I'm going to put the majority of that into ads. And I'm here to tell you, I think that is wrong. I think that's actually pretty antiquated, because ad effectiveness is not what it once was, and the marketplace is more sophisticated. So if you look at paid, owned, and earned, and paid, owned, and earned is not just digital. It applies to traditional media, physical media, or out of home, and it applies to digital. So if you take all of these together, this is kind of what this like almost like a menu. I call this the 9 box. But this is basically all the different ways that you can spend your marketing dollars in a given year. And all too often, when we think marketing, we think, oh, marketing is advertising. Marketing is synonymous to paid. And I'm here to tell you, marketing is bigger and broader than advertising. And that's like one I think big headline here. We talk about marketing budget. It's not just buying ads on Facebook and Instagram. That's part of it, but we need to think bigger and broader than that. Going back to like seventh grade geometry, if you guys remember this way back when, or fourth grade, I don't know what year it was, a long time ago for me. All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. Do you guys remember that? Like a rectangle has four sides and so forth, um, but that same notion applies to marketing. All advertising is marketing, but not all marketing is advertising. And so again, when we're thinking about our marketing budget, we need to think broader and encourage our clients to think broader than just running ads. You do need to run ads, but it just can't be about your marketing just can't be advertising. Case in point. Here's a company I'm sure everyone's heard of, Tesla. Tesla's famous for a lot of things. Obviously, Elon Musk and his just prolific personality. But one of the most famous things is up until recently, Tesla spent $0 on advertising. This is, I think, from maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But you'll look at Toyota, BMW, Honda, all these car competitors, how much money they spend on Facebook, YouTube. You see it right there. Tesla, zero on paid ads. But I would argue that, again, advertising is not marketing. Just because Tesla spent zero on advertising doesn't mean they spent zero on marketing. And again, I'm trying to get you to think broader about how to spend your marketing budget. So one, Tesla over the years, they did product placement. This is Elon Musk making a cameo, which I guarantee was not for free in Iron Man Part 2. Tesla's really good about generating word of mouth. So about maybe 7-10 years ago, this startup called SpaceX, and no one had really known about in most of the public, did a stunt where they literally launched a real actual Tesla car, convertible car, into atmosphere and had a live feed on it. So just think about that from a marketing expense standpoint, taking your product, putting it on a little rocket ship and blowing it into space. That cost Tesla about $90 million. So when you think paid, owned, and earned, I would argue that's owned. That's an owned asset, but it generated from an earned media standpoint in excess of $90 million. So it's another way of thinking about how to use your marketing budget. They could have spent the $9 million buying ads on Facebook, but they said, no, that's boring. That's what everyone else does. Let's do $90 million to create something that's worth talking about that kind of champions our brand and what we're all about. Another thing about Tesla, if you think about the 4 Ps of marketing place, also from their marketing budget, their dealerships tend to be in really high-end luxury shopping centers with high rent. And so instead of, again, placing a billboard in that area, paid ad, they're actually going to put their actual their dealership there. And that was very disruptive for the category, and a lot of people thought it was illegal. But again, it's a different way of using marketing budgets. So the whole point here is, paid, owned, and earned. There is another, and guys, we're more than halfway done with this presentation. There is another white paper called Media in Focus, Marketing Effectiveness in the Digital Era. It's also written by the same gentlemen, Les Bernay and Peter Field, that wrote the long and the short of it. And what they did is they looked at a bunch of campaigns, digital marketing campaigns that had paid elements, owned elements, and earned elements. And they were curious from the effectiveness, which one drove positive business effects. So you'll see some really fancy PowerPoint animations coming up. So they looked at here on I guess that's the y-axis, campaigns that just had paid and how many positive business effects, whether that's increase of sales, increased market penetration, increased brand recall. So campaigns that just ran paid, whether or not those positive business effects increased. So campaigns that just ran paid, and then campaigns that then added owned media, and then campaigns that added earned. And so when you had paid ads plus owned media, so your own content, your own event or something like that, positive business effects went up 15%. But when you added, or 13%, when you added earned media, it went up 26%. So the big lesson here is earned media, which is essentially, word of mouth, positive reviews and so forth. people saying, OMG, did you see this rocket company who I'd never heard of called SpaceX launched a car, an electric car into the atmosphere? That is very powerful as far as generating positive media effects. However, we've all heard of clients saying, I want a viral video. I want people to follow us on TikTok and engage with us. So let's do a campaign where we're trying to get people to engage with us. And the point here is they looked at campaigns that just did earn, like follow our hashtag and you do all the work, consumers, versus campaigns that did earned and owned, earned and paid, and then all three earned, owned, and paid. And overall, campaigns that properly integrated, and there's a big difference between multi-channel doing paid, own, and earn simultaneously versus omni-channel doing paid, own, and earn integratedly. But campaigns that integrated paid, own, and earn had a 78% increase in positive media and positive business effects. So the big idea here is that you want to, ideally, the right recipe for your marketing budget is to spend it on paid, owned, and earned. And in fact, last year, Tesla actually just started moving into paid advertising. They're still keeping their car dealerships. They're still doing, word of mouth type things, but they're starting to add an experiment. I think there's a quote here. Elon Musk announced that Tesla is set to try a little advertising. And there's more here. So number one is, diversify. So the typical marketing budget, I would say right now, is we're going to put the majority of money into ads and media buys. And I am by no means saying don't use advertising. You have to run ads. That's, everything is pay for play. But I would challenge you, instead of making this your media budget, try to do, I would put the emphasis on owned. For various reasons. And a big one is that's how you get first party data from your owned assets. And so I could spend a whole lecture on that, which I'm not going to. So that is the second part of how we should spend our marketing budget, diversify investments. And I think we got about 10 more minutes and then we can take some questions. The third principle of how we should spend our marketing budget is this idea of playing the long and the short game. Playing the long and the short game. Keep calm and play the long game. I would argue, ladies and gentlemen, that fundamentally there's only two marketing strategies available to any company, product or service, big, small, B2B, B2C, you name it. The first one is brand-centric marketing, and this is marketing that builds demand for your brand. Because I like metaphors, think of this as the turtle. It's kind of traditional, it's slow, it's kind of incremental progress. It's hard to measure progress. The other one is direct response marketing, and this captures existing category demand. And let's represent this as the rabbit, right? It's fast, it's sexy. Direct response marketing used to be like catalogs and TV commercials, when it had numbers. Now it's essentially digital marketing, or what's traditionally known as digital marketing. And if you guys kind of are following my metaphor here, there's a race between a rabbit and a turtle, and the rabbit takes off first, but eventually the turtle wins. So brand-centric marketing builds demand for your brand. It's getting people in their minds thinking, I'm not looking for tires, I'm looking for Firestone tires. Whereas direct response marketing is just like, I need to buy some tires. I don't care what brand it is, I need to buy some tires now. So brand-centric marketing influences future sales. It's harder to measure, and I'm kind of overwhelming you with slides, so you guys will get a copy of this, or we can talk in the Q&A. But basically, brand-centric marketing has kind of gone out of vogue because it's slow, it's hard to measure, but the thing is, it always wins in the end because you're building demand for your brand, and that actually helps justify higher prices. Because it creates perceptions of value and it makes your company more resilient. Direct response is a way of generating sales now. The way to think about direct response is paid search ads. So everyday people go online looking for car tires. And when you buy a paid search ad for car tires, you're harvesting that existing category demand that exists in Houston, Texas, if you will. It generates sales now, easier to measure. Race to the bottom, we can talk about. That's like the dollar menu at McDonald's and so forth. But again, the right-hand side, that's traditional digital marketing. And because it's easier to measure, this is also now known as performance marketing. I mean, sometimes brand-centric marketing is known as demand gen, and performance marketing is known as lead capture. There's a bunch of, we can use some terminology interchangeably, but these are the two main strategies that you have. And I would argue everything else kind of all is tactics that follow or in employment of one of these two marketing strategies. So the important thing here is in any given category, only about 3% of the total addressable market is ready to buy now. So back to my tire example. I'm assuming everyone on the webinar right now drives a car, has a car, and I can almost guarantee you everyone in the webinar is going to buy car tires in the next 3 years. But only 3% of you you're actively looking for car tires right now. And so if you put all of your dollars into basically traditional digital marketing, just, like, hey, if someone someone does the search, you're only capturing that 3% of that marketplace. Whereas everyone else, the majority of the market, they're not thinking about buying tires, but they're eventually going to start buying tires. And so the trick here is using your budget, spreading your budget both at the sales activation marketing as well as the brand building marketing. And this more or less resembles the traditional marketing funnel, right? And so oftentimes in digital, we're kind of looking at the bottom of the funnel, and that's where, because it's easier to measure, and that's where a lot of the attention goes. And look, I teach digital marketing at SMU, but I think you have to think broader than just the sales activation marketing. The white paper that this came from looked at all the data and said overall, so first of all, and I'll kind of explain why, and you're about to see some really fancy PowerPoint presentations. They looked at campaigns that just digital marketing campaigns that just did sales activation marketing. So that's like harvesting existing demand, people that are actively looking for car tires. And basically, this is what happened to sales. Campaigns that just did, performance-based campaigns, sales went up and down, up and down. Let's look at that animation again. That took me like hours to do. The brand building was much more growth. So let me explain this chart. So if you think of sales activation as your paid search budget, so when you're spending money on paid search, leads come in. But as we all know, the moment your paid search budget goes away, leads go away. And so there's no residual effects. Whereas brand building, even when the campaign stopped, there was still a lift as far as business metrics because you made an impression with the customer, you created an emotional response. There's this whole idea of fame, which we'll talk about. So the idea ultimately is that brands need to invest in both brand building and sales activation marketing strategies. And overall, they said there's about a 60-40 split. The research says, and I would say most marketing budgets go towards sales activation marketing because it's so easy to measure, but they would argue that you need to spend 60% of your budget on this brand building. And you can build brands online digitally, don't get me wrong, but it's harder to measure. And so because of that, CFOs don't like it as much. But the idea is you need to spend 60% that you're playing the long game of building brand preference for your product or service, and 40% harvesting that existing category demand. So overall, you need to play both the long and the short game. Hopefully that makes sense. And ladies and gentlemen, finally, before we do questions, the last point about how we should spend our marketing budget. So again, step 1, benchmark your budget. Step 2, diversify your investment between paid and earned. Step 3, invest in both brand building activities as well as sales activation activities. The fourth one is plan, iterate, and prepare to scale up. So hopefully I showed you that, look, share voice correlates to market share. So what your company currently spends on marketing is what's necessary to maintain current market share. If you want to grow, you're going to have to spend more money on than your market share. And this, when you spend more money than your market share, so when your share of voice is bigger than your market share, this creates what's called the excessive share of voice. And data tells us that for every 10-point increase, so if you are, let's say you have 20% market share, but you have 40% share of voice, so like there's just more positive messages about your product in the marketplace. For every 10% increment, your revenue will grow by 0.5%, like very reliably. And so, yeah, I'm saying spend more money to make more money, but be strategically how you get there. And so the big idea here is that you want to make a plan to actually spend more than your competitors are. I'm not saying do it tomorrow because this is money, but make a 3-year plan. So I would say find out what your budget benchmark is. How much are companies like you shifting from their revenue toward marketing? And then I'm assuming you're spending less, but let's just go with that for now. And so the first step is in year one, so this could be 2025, benchmark, audit your marketing, and then optimize your marketing, looking at the funnel and so forth, and start putting money both toward performance and brand marketing. So from a performance standpoint, right away, benchmark your current funnel, your current cost for acquisition. And I can almost guarantee you there's some friction in there. You've got bots, your messages are off, your landing page sucks, whatnot. So that's from the performance standpoint in year one. But in year one, also start investing in the brand building, emotional brand building, and emotional brand building is not just for B2C, it's also for B2B. It's also for boring products. You just have to get those insights and the problems you solve for your buyers. Um, and so just kind of showing you what I mean by emotional branding. I wish that marketing was as easy as this. Run an ad and get people to engage. But as we all know, the world's not that easy. I mean, if the world was this easy, there would be no bankruptcies, there'd be no homeless people, and we would live in Xanadu. But unfortunately, we don't live that world. So to illustrate this, if you guys know ALS Foundation, that's the nonprofit for the disease, I can't say it, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. This is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. It's the same disease that Stephen Hawking's had and so forth. So a couple of years ago, they were trying to raise awareness for the campaign and so forth. I'm showing you the effectiveness of emotional marketing that it's not relying on ads. So the ALS Foundation could have just ran a banner ad to promote their foundation. And they did for a while. And they would say someone was diagnosed with ALS every 90 minutes, find a cure. That is a paid ad. On the right-hand side, if you remember the Ice Bucket Challenge, that was them. And that's much more of an earned media. It definitely took resources. It definitely took coordination, right? But it was a different way of looking at their marketing budget. And so I would challenge you next year, not only doing paid activations, also doing earned activations that integrate with paid, and you'll get that media multiplier effect. So year one, benchmark audit, do performance plus brand. Year two, and in year one, let's just say that your budget benchmark is 13% of your revenue goes to marketing. Maybe you're not there that yet, so you only have 7%. But that 7%, find ways of making it work as hard as you can. So optimize your funnel and start laying those seeds of brand building. Year two, slowly start scaling up to whatever the category average. If the average company in your category spends 13% on marketing, that's your goal for year two. Let's scale to 13% of our revenue goes to marketing. And so always be testing, measuring. We all know marketing is nonstop iteration and testing. And then only then year two, the goal is for you to exceed the category average. So the average company in your category that sells the same type of products, has the same number of employees, if they're spending, let's say 13% on revenue, your goal is to exceed that benchmark in a sustainable way. And if you do that time and time again, you will grow your market share and everyone will be happy and everyone will get puppies. Guaranteed. Okay, so that is how we should spend our marketing budget. And that is my presentation of marketing budgeting is marketing strategy. So yeah, marketing budgets matter more than ever. How much you should spend on marketing, get the benchmark, and then benchmark, diversify, play the long and short game, iterate constantly, and make a 3-year plan to exceed the benchmark. Hopefully I made the case that marketing budget is marketing strategy. And ladies and gentlemen, that is my presentation. I'm 2 minutes over. Any question?
So if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute your mic and you can ask them out loud.
And there are no dumb questions. There's only dumb answers.
Brad, I just want to say, first of all, fantastic presentation. I took lots of notes and just full of insight and gems there. My question is about budgeting for a nonprofit. So as I mentioned in my introduction, I work for a nonprofit in the social services space, and for us, it's a little bit tricky because when I was on the other side of the ledger, so to speak, I used that benchmarking approach. I could always say, hey, this is what our industry is spending on marketing, but in the impact sector, there's a nuance there, which is that there are spaces where donors might be surprised to see you show up in terms of your marketing, which includes your advertising, as you so eloquently stated. So, any thoughts or advice on how to thread that needle in terms of striking the balance between making sure that you're budgeting appropriately for your nonprofit, but also doing that with that sense of responsibility in terms of where donors might expect you to show up, because these are donor generated dollars, right? So you can understand that sensitivity. But I know I just dumped a lot on you, but I'm sure you have some interesting thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, so my mom used to work in nonprofit. I think the short answer is nonprofit's really hard because in the marketplace of ideas and communication, you don't get credit for being a nonprofit. Like you are competing for people's attention against Tesla and TikTok and all of that. So that's just number one. Two is I think still I think a nonprofit should have the financial discipline like a for-profit in the sense of are the resources necessary to get the word out. Like I know there's some nonprofits that actually have generate revenue and run a pretty incredible organization. I would say also that marketing is not just advertising. You could say marketing is personnel and marketing is volunteers. So the ALS Foundation took a tremendous amount of donated hours that you could translate that into marketing staff. But their trick is they found an idea. Like that ice bucket challenge in many ways was a free idea, but the amount of coordination and also the amount of trust that the organization had to rely on for people to participate, and that this wasn't, some, schlocky brand promotion. This was real for real nonprofit. There's equity there. But I think this idea of like, oh, we're nonprofit, so we don't have to abide by the rules of business or communication. Unfortunately, you do. It's a marketplace of ideas. I would just think of that marketing budget from a resource standpoint, and your big equity is going to be volunteers. And for-profit places have to pay like market salaries. Nonprofit places for not you have staff. So hopefully that's not a dumb answer.
Thank you, Brad.
Any other questions? That's my email. I'm a nerd about this stuff. So if anyone has any questions, whatnot, feel free to email me.